Get out here, Lucas. Do you want to get out?
Lord, we ask you for your blessing upon council, direct and prosperous deliberations to thy advantage of thy glory, and the true welfare of the people for whom we serve. Amen. On behalf of the Glenelg Shire Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional lands and waters of the Gunditj Jamara, Jardwadjali and Bowendik people and their respective cultural heritages. I acknowledge the elders past and present here at today's gathering and through them to all Aboriginal people. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people provide an important contribution to Australia's cultural heritage and identity. We respectfully acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait community living throughout the Glenelg Shire and the contribution they make to Glenelg Shire's prosperity and well-being. Now, to those present in the gallery today, by attending the public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Council meetings may be live streamed and the CEO will enable a copy of that to the public. Now we have a receipt of apologies, Councillor Wilson and Mr David Hole as well. Question time. Questions taken on notice from the previous meeting are itemised there. Item 6.2, questions from the gallery this evening. We have one here from Mr Harvey, who has sent his question in. I'd like to read that out if I may, and then provide the answer from council. So, dear Paul, I wish to ask the following questions at the council meeting. The council provides a policy by which ratepayers under financial hardship may have rates and charges and or interest may be deferred or waived, or a payment plan may be put in place. Given the previous mayor was adamant that the 22% rate rise across the Shire would do no harm, we wish to know how many financial hardship applications were received in the financial year 21-22 and how many times this year 22-23. So, response from council is thus. In the last 12 months, council has had one hardship application processed. Rate officers work closely with those rate players experiencing difficulty, offering payment arrangements. As at the 30th of March 2023, there were 246 ratepayers on a payment agreement. As this data is not reported annually, council was unable to compare the figures to the 21-22 financial report. So that was the answer there. Thank you, Mr Harvey. Mr Hum. Now, Mr Hum, I've just glanced over your first question, and the last council meeting I indicated anything derogatory would be stopped there and then. So if you can read the question, please, sir, without some of the comments, that would be much appreciated. Otherwise, I'll be forced to move on to the next question.
Okay. Is this turned on? Yes? Okay. Rate proposal document. In 2022, a document was compiled by David Hole, the Director of Corporate Services, which is accessible on the council website and referred to the rating models that are able to be used by council. And I just want to quote a couple of bits from that. He stated the main difference between a rebate and differential rate is that in a rebate system, the amount is treated as a discount off the total rates for the relevant category and therefore not received as income. In this document, Mr Hole explained that council has historically used a discount rating model since 2011 actually, although it has always been referred to as a rebate. Hence the rebate model as touted by council staff and our former mayor on numerous council meetings has in fact never existed. It's important to note that there are important procedural distinctions here, as this has meant that the council has erred by considering the discounts as income received, and yet Mr Hole clearly articulated in a rebate scheme the amount is treated as a discount off the total rates for the relevant category and therefore not received as income. Hence it's clear that the discounted amounts were never received and therefore should never have been considered as income, and yet year upon year this is exactly what has occurred and has created an inflated base figure for calculating the following year's rates. The actual end result is that the actual income received figure is significantly less than what has been historically reported in official council documents with a staggering cumulative effect, culminating with the almighty last-ditch cash grab in the 23 budget, in which this council is proposing to repeat again this year, despite the assurance from former Mayor Rank that it would be a one-off. The long-term cumulative effect of this has been huge. The subtle substitution of a discount, calling it a rebate, is of huge significance. The figures proposed and accepted in subsequent budgets are deemed inaccurate, and this intrinsic process has enabled council to accumulate assets from the community, and in doing so fails the test of transparency. And herein lies the problem: when councillors place their trust in others to prepare financial documents, and by not checking the details, they actually fail, or you actually fail in your duty of care to the community by not examining the finer details of a budget, or avoiding the challenge because of a lacking in your skill set. My question is simply, who was responsible for what happened? What audit mechanism will be implemented to ensure that going forward this type of conduct is never repeated?
So, Mr. Hum, I'll thank you for your question. I'll let the girls there record that. I'll quote the Essential Services Commission, and I think that'll sum it up perfectly. You do mention what mechanisms are in place and currently in place. So council gets audited by an external body, an external accounting firm, Vargo, ESC, along with the Minister's Office as well. So these are all parties that are external to council, independent from council. And I'll read a statement from ESC, and I'll show you this document there, Mr. Hum, so you can actually download the document yourself.
I already have a copy.
Fantastic, then you'll be well aware of this statement right here. The 22-23 Glenelg Shire Council removed a long-standing rebate on farm properties. So that is the terminology that is correct, and you're saying is not. The ESC is saying that is correct. The council was compliant with the rate cap as its maximum level rates revenue for the 22-23. So, Mr. Hum, I can understand your narrative, but you're saying independent bodies are saying that is incorrect, that narrative, sir. Now, we are moving to a new budget. So, no, Mr. Hum, let me continue my reply, sir. So we are moving on to a new budget. So I hope that answers the question. The ESC has given it the tick of approval. The other bodies have given it the tick of approval. And I expect that is the last that we'll hear of that question, sir. So your next question.
I don't think it will be the last.
So, Mr. Hum, I will point out question number 2 that you do have down here is unfortunately not allowed under section 213(2)(5)(d).
So
now, also question 3, Mr. Hum, is also not allowed under the same question. Now, if you'd like some further clarity for that, I'm happy to provide that afterwards. So thank you for your question,
so
sir.
You're saying that I cannot ask a question about a discussion we had
so, Mr. Hum,
where you
governance,
challenged the performance
Mr.
of
Hum, if you're unable to finish, I'll have to ask you to sit down and you'll have to leave,
all
sir.
I'm doing is seeking
Mr. Hum, you're ordered to sit down, sir.
Are confident that all the other councillors.
So, Mr. Hum, as you are unable to follow directions, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
That's fine. I'm just seeing whether you're not.
So, Mr. CEO, can I ask you to please,
Mr. Mayor, obviously not.
Escort Mr. Hum out. Sorry, Mr. Hum, you've been asked to leave the premises, sir. You're unable to follow directions numerous times. You've been asked to leave, sir.
I can't hear you. You should speak up. I'm nearly deaf.
The Mayor, as the Chair, has asked me as the CEO to ask you to leave the building, please, Mr. Hum. Now, there's a requirement under the governance rules to take directions from the Chair. You failed to do it, please. Can you please leave the building?
Yep, not a problem.
Apologies, councillors. Apologies to those in the gallery.
Next question.
Sorry, councillors, I record the time as 7:08, so if there is any time extension needed for question time. Other people should not be punished. Thank you, Mr. Siart. Mr. Jowett, your question, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. My first question, on the comprehensive income statement, for 23-24, why is depreciation listed as an expense? Does that mean that the council's financial position is better than what you are telling us?
Thank you, Mr. Jowett. I do enjoy questions on the budget, considering we are in budget night. I will hand over to our CFO, Lauren Eason.
Thank you, Mr. Jowett. Yeah, in line with the Australian accounting standards, we're required to recognise depreciation as an expenditure item in the comprehensive income statement. If you wanted to see the result excluding depreciation, you could refer to the cash flow statement.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. Second question, Mr. Jowett. I said Jowett.
For that, has the council had any more discussions about the heritage grant scheme? That is the council going to be stopping giving money away to people that don't need it for repairs on heritage properties that they would have done if they hadn't received the money anyway?
Thank you, Mr. Jowett, for your question. We have not as yet had a conversation of that. It is due to be reviewed later on this year, which I believe councillors are quite keen to review. So when it comes out to the public for comment, we'll certainly keep you informed, sir.
Thank you.
And your third question?
Third question. Also listed in the budget was a mention of the 83 parcels of land at Dutton Way that the state government has restricted any further development on due to the risk of land erosion by the sea. What is the council's position on the future ownership of this land that the owners cannot actually build on?
Thank you, Mr. Jowett, and I think that is a fantastic question because that is contained within the budget documents, which we had a discussion earlier, but I will pass to Ms Eason to actually outline that further.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to share that council's just recently received a grant to do some investigative works into that particular body of land. So those works will, that work will be undertaken in the 23-24 financial year.
And we'll be receiving some feedback on what that report actually contains?
Yes, absolutely. We could bring that back to council and it would probably be addressed again when we adopt the budget or bring this report for declaring rates back to the council in June 2024.
Fantastic, thank you.
Awesome, good question. Thank you, Mr. Jowett. Mr. Byrne.
Thank you for that, and I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive and nervous about asking a question. I think we could all understand that feeling. The Glenelg Shire Council 2022-23 adopted budget income rate, your rates and charges is a collect of $31,392,000. Your employee costs are $26,339,000. That's way above mine Shire and Southern Grampians. They're 22 about. As a Glenelg Shire ratepayer, where is my value for money when you have withdrawn from providing aged care services and have only achieved a capital works spend of $10 million when you had budgeted for $35 million?
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. I'll address the withdrawal from Home and Community Care Services. That is a process. We've actually budgeted that for that withdrawal this year as well. So there's a portion of the budget that we're allocating to ensure that there's a smooth transition. We won't actually see any financial, obviously you're asking about the finances there, change till the following year's budget. So we've got a transition out of there first. There's also redundancies as well, which have been allocated in the budget as well, which I'm happy to show you afterwards if you'd like. So we're not actually going to see any benefit right there with regards to that. Delay of projects, yes, you quite rightly highlighted there are a delay of projects, but unfortunately they are out of our control. There are numerous reasons. I could hand over to the CEO to list some of those if you would like, but they are constraints that all local governments are facing. I don't think there's any surprise there, whether it's labour or materials or whatever the case may be. But I'll hand over to the CEO and he can actually highlight for you some of the constraints council's actually facing that are causing these delays.
Thanks for the question, Mr Byrne. As the Mayor pointed out, there are a lot of delays in project management, not just materials and service, but engaging contractors, but also some of the fairly extensive and comprehensive requirements to deliver a project. You could pick out any one of the major capital projects, particularly the ones along the foreshore. So if we said the multi-purpose facility, we need to go through consents under the Marine and Coastal Act. We need to apply through DECA to get those permits. There's a lot of requirements. We have to consult with our traditional owners, ensure that it's consistent with our Indigenous land use agreement. Other projects are impacted by delays in the timeframes of getting cultural heritage master plans. So there's a lot of requirements on council, as there are for any other commercial developer for that sense too, that to go through those planning requirements takes council time, and sometimes the availability of our local contractors does delay our projects, and there is considerable carryover of the capital works projects. If I go back to your value for money question, you know, we need to remember what's detailed in our annual report, in our council plan about the 120 odd other services we provide this community. We run 6 kindergartens, all our parks and gardens, all our facilities, our roads, our public street lighting, our libraries, our works depot. You know, the list goes on with 120 odd services. So yes, there is a considerable portion of those costs is employee costs to provide those services to the community each and every year.
Good answer.
My second question, and I want everyone to listen to it carefully, because it actually follows on from the Mayor and the CEO's answer. I'm going to ask the question about the bread and butter of the Glenelg Shire. Now, the bread and butter is your roads, your drainage, your parks and recreation, and your bridges. The Glenelg Shire Council has over 80 employees dedicated to roads and bridges, park and recreation, drainage, and here are their figures. Roads, an actual spend of $2,075,000. They had budgeted for $7,820,000. Bridges, $332,000, when the budget was $1,199,000. Drainage, $58,000 was your spend, when you budgeted for $2,597,000. You mentioned parks and recreation. They were busy there. Not busy enough. $4,851,000. Your spend, $2,180,000. The figures are deplorable. What have they all been doing for the year? And were the councillors, and that's every one of you, made aware of the dire actual outcomes of their capital work spend during the year?
So, Mr Byrne, I'm guessing that's a similar question to the first one, you know, why...
No, sorry, I'll tell you why it's not.
So no, just if you could clarify that question.
I'll clarify it for you. You were able to answer the first question talking about COVID and trouble getting people to work, contractors. This question is about the actual work that your employees do. So it's a different context. We've got 85 people on the ground. You employ them. They go to work every day, every week. And there are the figures. And it begged the question, What have they been doing? And more so, were all the councillors aware of how you were going with this work?
So your question again, sir, is what's holding up works?
Yes.
So it's similar to the first question.
It's
That
not
up in-
similar because the workforce you have on the ground, you employ them. Do you see the difference?
I'll hand that over to the CEO to add some further commentary on that.
Thanks, Mr Byrne. It's very similar to a question you asked at a previous meeting, and I did explain that, particularly if you look at some of the roads and the funding that we'd allocated there, the October flood event, we'd applied, I'm just giving you the answer. Yeah, we applied for funding under that emergency management response funding to fix our roads. Now that process is not always guaranteed that if I get $2 million in our council budget for a fund, it's not a given straight away that that $2 million is honoured until we complete a project, submit the documentation, it's QA'd, and then we are paid that. So what's been happening with all our works, particularly our reactive maintenance because of that flood event, we have delayed a lot of other works, there's no doubt about that, and we need to be strategically very careful that we don't commit our own Shire's funds to those roads in one big foul swoop, because the risk is if 50% of them are knocked back, that they don't fit the criteria and what has been provided to us, it's almost a retrospective process. We would end up spending $1 million of our own funds instead of that. So we have actually deliberately done it in small chunks of work for that particular recovery fund. So it may be that we do 50, 100,000, put in, get a payment in return, move to the next project to make sure our checks and balances do not spend the ratepayers' money on emergency work. Now that's a one-off event where we did have significant roads requiring significant resheeting, damage to our drains, some of our bridges, Shire wide, that we were required to do an assessment and methodically go through project by project, road by road, and submit that documentation to have the payment for it. So that's one example of what occurred. Now you talk about the parks and gardens. We've just had the Kelpie Festival, we've had a range of festivals. All our gardens and parks and reserves, our sporting facilities are all fit for purpose for events, sporting events and community activities. So whilst there may be some delays in expenditure, there are other things that happen that require our attention, and we need to be fluid and reactive to the community.
Thank you, Mr Byrne. Mr Punton.
Thank you. My first question is a follow-up from a question a couple of months ago. I'd like to thank you for the answer regarding the bluestone assets, bluestone material assets that the Glenelg Shire have in their possession. But my question now is, who arranged for the sale of some of these assets, these ratepayer assets, to a private individual without an open and transparent tender process?
Thank you, Mr Punton. With regards to the sale of assets, there is a policy with regards to that. Mr Hull would probably be the best person to speak to that, but I can actually hand that over to maybe the CEO who would provide some further details.
Thank you, Mr Punton, and I was aware of the question you raised last time, and as a result of that, we are currently still investigating that. There are obviously a policy. We are looking at compliance with that policy, and obviously a bit of an audit trail and documentation, and it's not been finalised, but it is currently being investigated because of the matters you raised.
Okay, because if you want some more information, I have names and places and dates.
More than happy to meet with you outside the chambers, Mr
Correct.
Punton.
Correct.
Okay.
Second question, Mr Punton.
This is to do with the council rates and tax. Now, I'm seeking clarity regarding the sorry, wrong page. Still see the clarity on this. About all taxes, all rates of taxes, all taxes imposed by what is called the local council are unlawful. Every rate notice that comes from the Glenelg Shire Council, ABN 4821728949005, with a demand for money accompanied by a threat of penalty, if not paid under your direction, has no lawful ability, neither the state nor the business called the Glenelg Shire Council, to demand payment of so-called rates. This brings into question the possibility of extortion being instigated by the Glenelg Shire Council.
Sutton, I'll get you to sort of ask your question.
Section 474.17 of the Criminal Code 1995. Can you produce at law the documents that evidence that this is not the truth and in fact law?
So I think, Mr. Punt, I'll summarise your question. You're saying that the rates the council sent out are unlawful. But I'll summarise your question there. I'll surmise that they're not. I'm not sure what you want to, how you want to go any further.
I'm asking you to prove.
Well, I'm saying they're not, Mr. Punt. I'll pass that over to the CEO.
Yep, no problem.
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Punton. I'll be happy to provide on notice some documentation. This has been raised by several members of the community at several times in various courts, and it is well acknowledged that the local government is an arm and is properly constructed, and there is case law to support that. Thank you.
So it doesn't, section 109 of the Constitution doesn't
So that was the answer, Mr. Punt. His third question, sorry.
Next question, and this is a good follow-up to the gentleman here that asked the question before. The Glenelg Shire Council has a works department. There's a wide and varied area of maintenance. How many on-the-ground employees, and we understand there's 80 or 84, are there, and why are there 7 levels of management above them?
So thank you for your question, Mr. Punt. I'll take that on notice for the 80 and the levels of departments. Obviously, there's a lot of departments within the council, so we'll take that on notice and we'll give you the correct answer, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Brian and Joanne Kerman. Kerman's over there.
Thank you. This question is in regards to item 14.8 of tonight's meeting agenda, titled Cape Bridgewater Wind Farm Nuisance Decision, Statement of Reasons. On the 16th...
I'd just like to declare a conflict of
interest. Yeah, there are 2 councillors that do have a conflict of interest. So what I might do is hand over to the CEO...
And the Deputy Mayor.
And the Deputy Mayor to take those.
Sorry, Mrs. Kerman, as you were.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right to go.
Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I'll just start again. Regarding 14.8 of tonight's meeting agenda, Cape Bridgewater Wind Farm Nuisance Decision, Statement of Reasons. On the 16th of May 2023, after the Supreme Court trial of the title above, the Honourable Justice Gorton concluded that the Council's refusal to provide us with reasons for its decision of no nuisance on the 22nd of March 2022 regarding nuisance complaints about the Cape Bridgewater Wind Energy Facility was unlawful. Honourable Justice Gorton of the Supreme Court of Victoria then ordered the Glenelg Shire Council to provide us, the complainants, with a statement of reasons and to pay our costs associated with this misconduct. My question is, what are the Council's total legal costs to date of and brought about by the Supreme Court litigation and defending the Council's unlawful conduct? Please provide an itemised breakdown of costs incurred in this litigation.
Thank you for the question. The agenda item that's listed for this evening is for the councillors to consider the statement of reasons that has been prepared for their consideration. It is a confidential attachment because it has not been passed by council resolution at this point in time. Now, one of the requirements is for this council to deliver a statement of reasons. This is a process that is being taken tonight to comply with the Justice's determination that a statement of reasons is provided within 60 days of that decision. So this is the first stage of that. There are reasons it is still confidential, and that is between legal parties for each party and council, that the details at this stage in the statement of reasons to be considered, once it is adopted by the council, if they adopt that statement of reasons, before it's made public, because there are obviously a lot of confidential matters between each of the three people involved in that proceeding. As to the issue around costs, that will be a matter for our legal representatives, and it will be determined not in this setting because there is a judgment by Justice that declares costs. They are yet to be determined.
I'm very happy for you to just send that itemised bill or invoice of our costs to us privately or our solicitor. Very happy because it's public money at the end of the day. Everyone who's a ratepayer deserves an explanation as to why this has happened the way it has. Okay, so I will expect an itemised invoice as
the matter's a legal
council,
matter that I'm not going to go into in the public chambers.
The council has requested an itemised invoice of our costs throughout this proceeding, and expenditure is public money.
So I've already given the answer. It won't be discussed in the chambers, and equally we may have received other parties' costs. We've not made that public either for the same reason. So it's still a legal matter, and it still may be subject to further legal proceedings or an appeal. So I'm not going to have any more commentary about it tonight because it is still potentially subject to legal matters in relation to that cost element. This item tonight on the agenda is specifically for the councillors to consider the statement of reasons.
But we don't know the statement of reasons.
No, because it has...
Point of order, Mr Acting Chair. This is commentary, and commentary is not prohibited. The gallery question has been asked, so I could ask that you ask for the next question and move on. Thank you.
So I will wait for the statement of reasons once again. So my second question is, given the volume of evidence of noise nuisance and related issues from the Cape Bridgewater wind facility...
Point of order. This line of questioning on this legal matter is not for this forum, so I would ask that
This isn't a legal question. There's nothing legal about this question.
This matter is a legal matter that this council is involved in.
It's not a legal question.
Mr Chairman, I ask you to move on.
Mrs. Kermond.
I will continue. This is not a legal question in any way.
I respectfully ask that you don't finish your question as a...
Point of order, Mr Chairman.
Point of order.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I will be asking this question.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Kermond, I don't want to ask you to leave.
Given the volume of evidence of noise nuisance and related issues from the Cape Bridgewater wind facility provided to Council and the Supreme Court, is the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Chris Bowen, or any other government minister currently planning to visit Portland to make an announcement regarding offshore wind farms in this Shire?
Mr Chairman, I call for a 5-minute adjournment, please.
So second.
Those in
Approved.
favour?
Those in favour.
Thank you. Mr CEO. Acting Chair, can I move a resumption of standing orders, please?
So second.
Those in favour? Meeting resumed. Mrs. Kermond, upon advisement, I will disallow your question for protection of yourself and for this council, given this is a litigated matter.
The second question, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Well, I can withdraw anything that's litigated. I was just asking the question because it seems to be common knowledge that a minister is attending soon to Portland to make an announcement. And because we're in the Glenelg Shire and you are our representatives, I assume that you might know.
No.
You don't know personally?
No, I do not.
Right.
Next question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have another
that was
question,
my
Mrs.
question.
Kermond?
It wasn't in regards to the litigation,
Next
that particular one.
Do you have another question,
Just given the
Mrs. Kermond?
history of all our issues and the known issues of wind farms.
These are
that-
comments,
that-
Mrs. Kermond.
No, I
Do
was
you have another
explaining the
question?
question because you didn't seem to understand whether it was litigated question or not.
I do understand the question, Mrs.
Yep.
Kermond, and I answered it for you.
Okay. So you
you
don't
have
want
another
to
question?
answer the question. Is that what we're all saying? You don't want to answer the question.
You asked me a question if I knew about a minister, and I do not.
Right, I'm asking everyone here, all the councillors.
You're asking
and
the chair.
CEO.
The chair is the only one that can answer for you.
Right. Okay.
Next question.
Do you have another question, Mrs. Kermond?
That was the second question. No, that was all. That's right. The first question was two parts. So no, they were my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Mrs. Kermond. I'll ask the chair and Councillor Carr to return.
Okay.
Do you know if it's another question? Are there any more?
Are there any more questions?
No, that's it.
Oh, that's good, because I was going to say.
Now move on to item 7, declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest for the meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest for item 14.8, Cape Bridgewater Wind Farm. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr, and I'd also like to declare a conflict of interest for the same agenda item 14.8. Thank you, councillors. Moving on 8, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, there's a recommendation there. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, 23rd of May 2023 as circulated be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. We have a seconder.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any commentary, Councillor Hawker? No. Thank you. For that to the vote, all those in favour? So moved 7-0. So 6-0. The other count. Notices of motion, Neil. Petitions, Neil. Item 13, committee reports. Councillors, there's a recommendation there on page 6 I've got.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that Council receives the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee held on the 1st of June 2023 and adopts the revised Audit and Risk Chart of 2023 to 2025 in accordance with section 54.1 of the Local Government Act 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Carr.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Thank you,
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is always the most exciting reading on our agenda, I know from all of you. But I mean, I think that, you know, if you take into account all those items listed on page 7 of tonight's agenda, the internal audit function of this council with our independent members is very robust and involves anything from OC health and safety to information asset registers to cyber crime, etc. So it is a full extensive audit of all of the functions, including obviously our risk and any other matters that come to pass. So the charter has been updated, Mr. Mayor, to come into the next couple of years, and we do a 2-year focus. The years run very, very quickly, but there's plenty of information there for councillors to read on what the functions are behind the actual council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Carr.
Nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Any councillors, any further comments? No. All those in favour? So moved, 6-0. Come to item 14.1, Councillor in Chief Executive Officer Leave of Absence Register. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council approve the Councillor in Chief Executive Officer Leave of Absence Register presented as a confidential circulation under Section 35(1)(e)(4)(6) of the Local Government Act 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Rake, hand up. Thank you. Councillor Hawker, would you like to comment?
No.
Councillor Rake? Good. All those in favour? So moved, 6-0. Move to item 14.2, lease agreement between the Glenelg Shire Council and Fast Cities Australia. Councillors, is there a recommendation there? Councillor Smith.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I approve this lease to EV Networks on behalf of Fast Cities Australia for an electric vehicle charging station in Portland. For those online, some background. We sought public consultation for the appetite and location of a charging station in Portland. Some non-negotiable requirements existed, such as access to power, impact and amenity to local business, loss of priority parking, safety concerns at night and proximity to the CBD. We received submissions in which around 33% disliked the final location, 33% were neutral on the location and 33% supported the location. This location is next to the Henty Street amenities in the Aldi car park area. Other locations were sought for the charging station, but not all met the requirements as much as this location. The feedback from those submissions was well received and taken on board. I will acknowledge that while the location may not suit everyone at this current time, we hope that in the future, when we have the opportunity, if so, to give the Henty Street amenities a well-deserved and overdue refurbishment, it will then be realised as the most suitable location within our CBD. A charging station is an integral part of inclusive tourism today, allowing those who own electric vehicles to make their way into our beautiful Shire. Dartmoor has recently received a charging station, and due to Dartmoor's specific location has been well utilised by travellers thus far. Another is to be built in Cassidy in due course, and electric vehicle ownership is on the rise. Although uptake is slow in our part of the world, it is still vital that we attract those from outer areas, as I said earlier. I personally don't have an electric car, and I don't believe they're the answer that we seek, but I do believe that this charging station is warranted and will be utilised well into the future, as well as work as a lever to boost public visitation.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Rake.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin, for your comments. I think you covered it off. I think the thing is to know that this we're going through this process because we received funding from the state government, so it's not ratepayers' money. It is an opportunity to install them. As Councillor had said, it attracts tourists to the area, and there were some limitations. So unfortunately, yes, we weren't able to put them in certain places, but it's probably one of the best outcomes. I think the other thing to note is that people were making comments around whether they should be in petrol stations or at certain locations, supermarkets. It has to be on council land. It can't be on private property. And I think the thing is, what we'll see is that they will come up more and more around the Shire anyway, and this is just the first step in providing a service at no extra cost to the councillors, because we received state government funding for this.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, I should have actually called for any opposed to the motion. There was none. Anyone else for further comments? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. 48 responses from the community, thank you. Whilst it may seem that EV vehicles for the regional masses is still a long way away, EV tourism vehicles are at our doorstep and they're currently driving straight past us. We must take advantage of this opportunity and this funding. I do hold some concerns, as did some of the 48 submitters, about the location in Henty Street. You know, it isn't that good a look, the amenities, but I can confirm that the amenities are due to be upgraded in next year's budget. And hopefully that gets done sooner rather than later. I wish there was more suitable alternative locations identified, but there wasn't, for the reasons already explained. It is council-owned land, there is three-phase power there, and we must take this opportunity. I did ask some questions about the $1 peppercorn lease, and the feedback I got was it takes 6 years for these things to start making money. So the $1 is an enabler to bring that tourism dollar into our community. So I see it as a positive step forward. We need to take advantage of it because EV vehicles are now, they are everywhere, and we do need them coming into our community. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Carr. Councillors, any further comments? All good? All those in favour? So moved, 6-0. Councillors, item 14.3, the Glenelg Shire Council Financial Report, May 2023. There's a recommendation there. Councillors, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council receives the financial report for the period ending May 2023.
Councillor Stevens
Happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Opposed? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, so we're just looking at May here. We'll look at the comprehensive income statement year to date of 7 million. So we're in a pretty good position there when we're going to be underspending. We're also underspent year to date on our employee costs, mainly driven by vacancies. I will come to your capital works program. It's been a bit of a topic tonight and I have asked many questions in the background. The adopted budget was 10.9 million. The reforecast, which was done in March, was 35 million. Year to date, we've actually spent 11.2 million. So we've overachieved in terms of our adopted budget and we've still got 1 month to go. I asked some questions about the 35 million and it's mainly the carry forwards from last year come in at 12.5 and then as we get funding allocated during the year, that also gets forecasted in the March reforecast and there will be a carry forward into next year's budget and that's another about 13 million. So it's about, just on the infrastructure line, it's 25.7 million. So I hope that answers some of the queries. If you look at the buildings in the top line, we adopted a budget of 5.375 and year to date we've only spent 680. The main driver for that is we thought we'd be building a multi-purpose facility down at the foreshore. We haven't started yet, so obviously we haven't spent that money and that'll be carried forward as capital works in the next year. So I hope that provides some clarity, but in terms of the budget spend that we thought at the start of the year, we've actually overachieved at this point in time and we've still got a month to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, as it is budget night, I mean, obviously we're coming into the end of this cycle, the financial year. But look, as I'm a roads person and spend a lot of time on the road, I take a keen interest in our roads. Mr. Mayor, we adopted a budget last year that said that we would spend $2.9 million on our roads. If we look at the third column, we have spent $2.075 million on our roads. That's to the end of May. So I would assume that there's another month coming in there, and when we see the financial report for the end of June this year, we would be around that 2.9 because that's what we estimated. What is really, really pleasing is in the middle row there is the forecast budget which we're going to end on this year. The forecast budget for us to end on is 7.82 million. Now, that 7.8 million is the money that we have picked up, we've applied for from the state and federal government, and we've got nearly $5 million extra. It's actually 4.9 million, but let's not scrap over that. Let's say around 5 million. Now, that has come in through flood recovery money, roads to recovery money, all of those other allocations that we continuously apply for, that we don't just rely on our ratepayers' money to do all this work. So we have an extra $5 million over and above what we said we would do. Now, our staff behind those closed doors over there in the assets and infrastructure area are applying themselves to spend that $5 million. Now, we are punching well above our weight in getting funds over and above our own resource. But we said we'd spend 2.9, and I bet you we'd spend 2.9, because that's what we said we would. But the fact that we've got nearly $5 million extra is a bonus. It's not that we're not spending the money, it's a bonus. So when you reread these documents, how about we just take into account what was adopted, what's the year to date, and what's the actual add-ons that we've got throughout the year. We can't expect the staff to go out there and spend $5 million overnight when they're just, you know, we picked up recently, I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, it's probably here somewhere, Mika. I don't know, we picked up 1.1 million, no, we picked up 1.1 in local roads, just in the last month. Now, you can't spend that overnight. We're doing well.
10 seconds left. Well timed, Councillor Stevens.
Well
Sorry,
done,
there's no
Councillor
commentary, sorry.
Stevens. Thank
Councillors,
you.
any further comments regarding the budget?
No,
No,
well said.
No, the
Well said.
monthly report, sorry.
Finance report.
Finance report, correct. All those in favour? So passed 6-0. Move to item 14.4, Glenelg Shire Council fees and charges 23-24. Councillor Rank, there's a recommendation there.
Yes, there is, Mr Mayor, on page 17. I move the recommendation 1, 2, 3, 4 in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Spialski.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens.
The fees and charges process is a requirement under section 94 of the Local Government Act, which we're obliged to operate under, that we should prepare and adopt our fees and charges. This went out for consultation. We've received feedback. We operate over 400 fees and charges. Under the Essential Services Commission, we're only allowed to increase them 3.5%. Most of these are under 3.5, with an average of 1.08% that our fees and charges have gone up. So that's not that is not much, considering we've taken into effect cost of living pressures. So even though it is a significant contribution to our budget, we have been able to have these fees and charges at an average of 1.08. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rank. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, councillors. The 2023-24 fees and charges are quite an extensive report, and it covers, as Councillor Rank has said, all the fees and charges that we have. We don't make these up as we go. We certainly have some prescribed fees in there, which we call statutory fees, which we have no control over, which are set by the government. So it's a combination of council's own services and then the government services that we must abide by their ruling. So, look, it's gone through the process, Mr Mayor, and I'm happy to move with what we have here.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Any further comments from other councillors? No? All those in favour? So passed 6-0. Item 14.5, Glenelg Shire Council Declaration of Rates and Services Charge for 23 and 24. Councillors, a recommendation there. Councillor Smith.
Happy to move the recommendation in its entirety in 1, 2 and 3, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do we have a seconder? Councillors? Councillor Walker. Any opposed? Right. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I approve the recommendation as circulated, items 1, 2 and 3, to raise the amount of rates as per that recommendation by the way of the differential in said recommendation, as well as re-honouring the concession of the 83 parcels of land on Dutton Way that remain undeveloped. As a councillor, it is your job to do as defined under the Act, under Section 28, but also to maintain financial viability for the council well into the future. And as local government representatives, I believe it is us at the table that set the standard for long-term thinking, as clearly we often let down by the cyclical 4-year mindset of upper tiers of government. Last year, this council made the decision to revert back to a differential system in its entirety, and that has caused much debate in the community about how and why. Debate is one thing, but disrespectful behaviour is another. Never in my life have I been treated so poorly by, luckily, a small minority of the community. I will not tolerate this disrespect to myself any longer, to myself or any other of my fellow councillors, no matter their view. I don't care what the level of frustration or misunderstanding you have with the system, there's a way to communicate that, and the way that we've seen in the past 12 months isn't that way. Becoming a councillor or part of the government doesn't automatically make you a tyrant as soon as you do something that is unpopular. I never became a councillor to be popular. I put my hand up to help my community. I knew that would be tough, but I did not foresee the difficulties in which I have faced due to the rules and regulations we are required to work within. Albeit this is not an experience I would trade for the world, and I hope that I've become a better councillor because of it. As a council, we can minimise our rate take through our rate in the dollar. We can always minimise our costs where possible, which we are trying. We need to learn to be okay with respectfully declining state government grants for projects which may place us under undue pressure unexpectedly. But most of all, we need to stand staunchly against cost shifting. Local governments are on their own when it comes to cost shifting. Project management and cost allocation is something we know we can hone in on and perfect. As humans, we all make mistakes, and as an organisation made up of many, many humans, as we've seen tonight, we also make mistakes. The important part is that we learn from them and we move forward continuously. It has come time for me to reiterate that I encourage all staff to be innovative. Sometimes you'll get it right and other times you won't. But the community rely on you to enhance this council and its effectiveness to serve.
30 seconds, Councillor Smith.
In closing, I will maintain the change in which we made in June 22. And who knows, perhaps in November 2024, we'll open a new window of opportunity for new ideas and innovations to change the direction of council. But for now, we are committed to many projects which we are carrying forward in this year's budget, and it is my job as part of this council to see that they are completed.
Time, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hawker.
I really don't think I've got much to add to that, Councillor Smith. Well said. But I tell you what, councillors have been victimised, threatened, degraded, insulted and harassed for over 12 months. This has to stop. This is bullying. We're here to do a job. We can't do it when we're forever looking over our shoulders. Harassment is unwanted, it is unwelcomed and it is uninvited behaviour. So please, start being kind.
Councillor Hawker. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the community who took the time to review and make one of the 63 submissions to the draft budget, which also included rates. I'd also like to thank those who called or arranged to meet me in person or come here and present to us councillors for their thoughts in relation to council's rating strategy for FY24. Approximately 40 of those submissions referred to the rates, specifically the primary reduction land rebate, requesting that the 3.4 million collected in FY24 should not have been collected in FY23 and shouldn't be collected in FY24, and that should be returned to the ratepayers. There was a petition with over 1,700 signatures seeking a full audit and inquiry of the GSC proceedings and financial management, relating to the FY23 budget process. The books and processes have been independently audited by the ESC and VARGO and signed off by the relevant organisations with no fault found. I do understand the issue being raised by the ratepayers. People are doing it tough and are extremely frustrated by the out-of-pocket increase on average of 19 and 20% that was struck in FY23 budget when compared to what they paid in FY22. But I'll be honest, I currently do not have the legislative enabler to remove the 3.4 million that was added in FY23 from the FY24 budget as requested by the submitters.
30 seconds, Councillor Carr.
I also don't have the legislative enabler to reinstate a rebate to primary production land. What we have is a differential rating system, and that is what I'm required to work on by the Act. The motion moved tonight will effectively raise rating revenue by 3.48%. The motion keeps the 70% differential in place for primary production land, which I fully support. So what does the 3.48% mean?
Time, Councillor.
Happy to move an extension of
Is there
time.
a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. All those in favour? I don't know if you can vote for yourself, but okay.
Carried. Myself. Thank you. So what does it mean to your out-of-pocket increase, this 3.48%? So general rates will go up by $52 per annum. That's $1 a week. Commercial rates will go up $30 per annum, or 60 cents per week. Now I'm talking average across the ratepayers in that sector. And primary production will go up $100 per annum, or $1.90 per week. The increase is in line with the 3.5% rate cap, which was set by the Fair Go rate system under the Victorian Government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, any further commentary? No? Back to the vote. All those in favour? So passed 6-0. Item 14.6, Strathdowney Drainage Scheme. Councillor's recommendation there. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as tabled in its entirety on page 27, items 1 through to 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Do we have a seconder, councillors?
Yep, happy
Councillor
to move.
Rank.
Thank you. Thank you,
Opposed? Just checking. No, all good. Councillor Stevens.
We didn't have any members of the public opposed to this, so I don't know why councillors would, but anyway, that's another
Just
story.
checking.
Mr Mayor, the Strathdowney Drainage Scheme is a very unique scheme. There's only 2 in the whole of Victoria. It takes in nearly 52,000 acres of land across Lake Mundy and Strathdowney, which is way out on the border over there. If we didn't have this drainage system, we would have a swamp at Strathdowney, the whole lot of it. So a really important ratepayer for us is the Strathdowney Lake Mundy communities, and this is quite a complex drainage system that does take some maintenance. And this is a very old system that's been around for a long time. But council supports the landholders out there with the committee that they have, and they strike a charge for maintenance of the system each year, and it's detailed tonight on page 27. So we haven't had any objections from any landholders, and I'm happy to support the recommendation as tabled.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Rank, any further commentary you'd like to add?
No, Councillor Stevens' knowledge and history of this, I have nothing to add.
Fair enough. Councillors, any further commentary?
No.
All those in favour? So passed 6-0. Rightio, councillors, we come to item 14.7, the adoption of the Glenelg Shire Council Budget 23-24. There's a recommendation there on page 30. Be the mover. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation on page 30 in 1, 2 and 3 in its entirety.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank
happy
you,
to second.
Councillor Rank. Any opposed? Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I approve this draft budget and recognise the 63 submissions that were received. Within these 63 submissions, there were a few copies. These submissions were unfortunately wasted opportunities, as submissions are always a chance to offer something constructive and give us your opinion on what you think of what we're putting forward. Luckily and surprisingly, there were submissions about projects in which people wanted included in the budget, like the camp shelter in Merino and the idling tracks and trails project in Casterton, which both will be recognised in the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program Phase 4, which is government-funded allocations of money for small community projects like these ones. The budget itself is an expansion of last year with many carry-forward projects, which I hope we can finish as to not lumber the next council with them also. This year, the fair go rate cap is set at 3.5%, which is what this budget will increase overall rate take by. The budget has been out for public viewing for some time now, and those that are interested will probably have already seen it in draft form. But if adopted, will be available on the website online if anyone watching along tonight would like to check it out. We do foresee a surplus thanks to some late additional funding from the state government for roads, but as councillors know well, this is not the actual underlying result for council. I do completely sympathise with those following along with us, like myself, that do not find the national accounting standards which we must adhere to helpful or intuitive at all when reading a budget. I think it's very important that a budget document should be very easy to read, but it's not. And although that's out of our control how we format the budget, I think it would be extremely beneficial for all local councils to make budgets easier to understand for the people, especially when it comes to our underlying result and what money we actually have. State government money shows up on our balance sheet, but we in fact don't have any jurisdiction over when it comes to allocation or timing. This inflates our income inadvertently. The biggest highlight is that we are maintaining our services. We are transitioning out of hack services, of course, but retaining all our others. Services, while expensive and complex, are where community needs are met. Although I can appreciate the need and want for infrastructure projects, our services are our number one. Over the last 40 years, council services have expanded from the anecdotal rates, roads and rubbish to a whole raft of services which aim to enhance the lives of those in our shire. At any point in time, services can be minimised to cut costs and obligations, but morally and ethically, this is impossible.
30 seconds, councillor.
Unless we have someone external to pass the service on to, much like we are seeing with hack services. Councillors and staff understand these cost increases that everyone is facing daily, which we often talk about here in this chamber. The people that work in this building pay into the same rate structure, pay to the same supermarkets, the same service stations and the same schools, which everyone does. Even the council of business receives cost increases.
Time, councillor, to move it.
Have you got much more?
Can I have an extension, please?
Have you got much more? Much more.
Just a small amount.
Happy to move.
Move that. Have we got a seconder?
Seconder.
All those in favour? So moved.
Thank you. It is certainly not the intent of council to create more difficult circumstances for those in which we serve, and the inherent divide local councils have between them and residents often doesn't help in trying to mitigate the feeling of disenchantment for some. So yes, your rate notice may increase by up to 3.5% this coming year. You may see an increase of more. You may even see a decrease, but this will be in direct correlation with your property value. I look forward to our future into 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Rank.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Smith, for that comprehensive overview. There was one I think I wanted to make some comments on because it's probably been a question that we are asked often and taken questions from the gallery on this item, and it's one of those fortunate things where we've made the decision not to roll out our FOGO, our green waste, and I've probably stolen somebody else's commentary, so apologies for that. When this was first mooted by the state government that we would roll this out, we were of the understanding that we would receive funding, state government funding, to be able to provide this service. Some councils received it, and so that is why they were the first ones who were able to provide a number of bins and be able to collect organic wastes, because they were subsidised to do that. We are not. And when we crunched the numbers, it worked out that we would have to put a charge of $85 per person on top of the annual charge. And we felt that this was too much to bear because it's an all-in. You can't just one or a couple, or you can't say no. So we felt that if we imposed an $85 per person charge on top of the annual fee, that would be just too much. We're not mandated to roll this out until 2030, so it just gives us a little bit of time to maybe work out or maybe apply for some funds or work out how we can reduce this rate. It's an unfortunate thing that we can't provide this service, and we apologise, but this is one of those cutbacks, but no doubt that we'll put it forward in the next one. So just thought we'd provide a reason for that.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and yeah, I too would like to thank the 63 submitters, and 23 of those were related to what may be delivered for their community within the FY24 budget. So budgets are exciting. Effectively, they lay the financial platform in front of everyone so that council can get on with it in terms of delivering on the council plan for the community in which we serve. I'm glad to see some amendments flow through as a result of the submissions, where commentary has been added that the Merino Barbecue Shelter and Casterton Rail Trail be considered as part of the next lot of LRCI funding. I use the word considered. I am also passionate about the green waste bins, but I will concede there was a lack of support from the community, and given the cost of living pressures at the moment, the $85 per annum increase to the users of that service, which was an all-in. You didn't have to, it wasn't an opt-in, it was all-in. It's now just not the right time, and I really do hope, and I will continue advocating, and I will ask the question again next year during the budget process, because I think green waste bins are long overdue, but I hope we do get the funding to purchase the bins. The highlights of the Capital Works program, you know, your $3 million allocated for our priority projects to leverage, you know, for additional funding from state and federal governments. You've got the Portland Roundball facility, the aquatics facility upgrades there. So, you know, we put a bit aside to help us advocate to get those larger projects funded from state and federal governments. We've got $375K for building works.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Time, is it?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, all right. Well,
We're not giving you extension.
I did ask you before.
The Capital Works program, look, it's quite extensive. They've got the Henny Street amenities in there as well. We've got some carry forward projects, you know, $3.8 million for the Portland Foreshore multi-purpose facility. Still got a bit left to do out at Alexander Park at $1.4 million. $1.8 million out at Bridgewater, Cape Bridgewater that is, for landscaping and paving ways. We've got $2.3 million for the Portland North Industrial Precinct, $3.6 million for local freight roads, you know, and another $100K for lighting.
Time, Councillor. If you
and
move for an
ceremony
extension,
and
Councillor.
space.
You've got 2 pages.
I've got 3.
Are you kidding me?
We'll give you 2 more minutes. That's what you can get if we
I
have
can
a
sit
mover
down
and a
if you
seconder.
want.
No, okay, go.
Mover, thank you, Councillor Wright.
Happy to second
All those in
extension.
favour? Oh, hang on. Can we have show of hands, please, councillors? All those in favour?
Just.
Thank you. So moved.
Just hurry up, all right. Council will deliver over 120 services to the community, you know, with 200K still for community grants, and we're going to continue to support our 3 iconic events, which are absolutely fantastic. All right, well, I'll just pick out a few. So the Statement of Human Resources, this year we had 286.7 full-time equivalent employees at 26.7 million. FY24 we're going to have 269.6 full-time equivalent employees at 26.5 million. Not much difference there. The main driver for the decrease is obviously the transition away from aged care services, and the reason the dollars are similar is due to the EA percentage increase for all staff and the potential cost of redundancy payments and employee entitlement payments as a result of the transition away from that service. So that's what's driving that. Statement of cash flows at the end of the year, 5.6 million. Look, it is being propped up by borrowings of 7 million. Council must forecast a cash flow positive position, hence the borrowings. This enables Council to meet its financial commitments. However, it is unlikely that Council will need to borrow any money due to the way in which capital works is funded, forecast and expended. What I'm trying to say is at the end of FY24, based on history, there will be carry forward projects again and hopefully no need to borrow that money. And I'll finish at that.
30 seconds.
All right, we'll keep going. All right, we'll go to the comprehensive income statement.
Sorry.
It is projecting a surplus of $1 million. The work done by the executive team to generate this outcome was much appreciated. It's a much more palatable position than when we originally started and which was presented to the councillor team. But we do know there will be big challenges as the year progresses. Carry forward from capital works will come in from FY23 program, new grants will come in, and we're currently forecasting to spend 100% of the capital works program, which is highly unlikely, and I've got one paragraph left. This council does have some work to do in the next 12 months. We need to identify the reducing enablers to meet the future projections for expenses relating to materials and services in 25, 26, 27, which are currently sitting at 17.5 million. That's $1.5 million less than what we've got in this year's budget. So we've got a bit of work to do over the next 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Carr, for that thorough. Not leaving
control.
Councillors, further comments? Councillor Stevens?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was just the last bit that he added on, but Councillor Carr did a beautiful job in reminding us of all the projects that were being undertaken in Portland. What was it? $5.8 million on the foreshore, Alexander Park, another 1.4, Bridgewater, 1.8. Portland North Industrial Precinct, 2.3. I find it hard, Mr Mayor, to stand here and approve this budget when all of these projects are in Portland. Can I just remind this council that the general rate assessments from over 10,000 assessments in our general rates, that's all the residential properties across the Glenelg Shire, bring in $13.9 million. Can I just remind councillors that of 2,751 assessments are primary production. That's assessments. We only have about 500 farmers, but they pay $10 million. $10 million from our farmers and $13.9 million from across the general rates. And not one project outside of Portland. Now, I asked one of our senior managers a couple of months ago to tell me what projects had been done outside of Portland. He came back and said, you know, there'd been some work done on the Hayward Transport Station and there'd been some work done on the
30 seconds.
Caston Sun Yards, which was all funded by the government. We did the dump point at Dartmoor and we did other projects. Some of the submissions we received were for projects that this council has done strategic planning on but has not been funded. I support this council and I've been a long supporter of projects across the Shire and I continue to support projects across the foreshore and across Portland.
For an extension of time.
Move to extend.
We have a mover, we have a seconder. All those in favour?
Thank you, councillors. But I mean, it would be remiss of me not to highlight the fact that the rest of the Shire has ratepayers and has needs. We have community members coming to us saying, when is our project going to be funded? I want everybody around this table just to remember that there are localities outside of Portland. Whilst I support the city and the development, I also support every other locality that's punching well above its weight in its communities, volunteering. Give them a break and look at what needs to be funded, what strategic plans we have out there for paths and trails. How can we support them? It might be a $20,000 or $30,000 project, but let's look at how we're going to support them. And don't tell me that community grants are available to those voluntary groups, and maybe some of those community groups may be able to do the heavy lifting through community grants. It's about us having the vision, this council supporting our communities across the whole of the Shire and not concentrating on just spending money in here. I have supported the development of Portland for the 20 odd years I've been on this council, but I've also advocated strongly for every other community outside. So where is the money in this budget that supports those communities?
Wrap it up, please. Thank you.
I might get an extension to continue, Mr. Mayor.
Did you ask for one?
No, it's all right.
Councillors, any further comments? Councillor Hawker.
Can I just please add, I know Councillor Carr did mention it, but, you know, if we can all just take a moment and a special thank you to the finance team and the officers for the work and their effort and the timeless hours and the sleepless nights that you've all been put through to get this up to date.
Here.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Councillor, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just having a couple of quick minutes to cover off some points that I think other councillors haven't done, although that's taken up most of my speech. So first off, I would like to thank the CEO, the exec team and the staff for bringing this budget together. Council provides more than 120 services to people of all ages and stages in life. So I wish to thank the workers who provide a solid foundation for this council to deliver outcomes to this community. Now, the rate increase was capped at 3.5 for residents with the cost of living in mind, even though the Essential Services Commission came out and said it needed to be at least 4% for councils to survive their cost increases to deliver services to the community. Councils' fixed costs, those we have no option but to accept, like utilities, software licensing, superannuation, work cover, these increases are in excess of $2 million, and a 3.5% rate increase is owed at $845,000. That's the challenges this community, not this council, this community faces to help deliver services to the community. Now, I know Councillor Carr loves finances. I wouldn't mind speaking a little bit as well. Two main areas that I think council, through the direction of councillors, need to concentrate on, and that is the net underlying result, which Councillor Smith mentioned as well, along with our asset renewal ratio as well. So, to use plain speak, the net underlying result is looking at our day-to-day expenses against our income. That's the rates the council receives. So we're living within our means, and it is a close description of what that actually is. So on page 25 of the budget document, section 2.9, it shows we are living outside our means at the moment. However, it's also showing a significant reduction for this budget, and good financial management will see that reduce again the following years to come. Our goal is to get that as close to zero as we can without reducing the services and rates the ratepayers expect. It's a balancing act for councillors that we need to perform as council. Now, we do receive some financial help from the state and federal, so it's not all doom and gloom, but it's best practice to get it as close as we can. And as you can see, we're continuing to do that. The other area is asset renewal ratio. Quite simply, it's allocating enough money on maintaining our assets so they don't fall apart. Now, I'm sure the CEO's had a heart attack with me using that wording. So the technical term is asset renewal upgrade in relation to its depreciation. So currently, we sit around 53.6%. And we need to get that towards 80 to 100%. Now, we can run on the short to medium term at those levels. However, it will just create a problem down the track. So this includes looking at what assets council has and maintains and asking some tough questions. That reduces the depreciation along with things like cleaning costs and focuses that money where it's needed the most. Creating efficiencies and saving money that can be used elsewhere. Now, this budget might be tight. However, we have modestly included $100,000 in new footpath and drainage. Waste collection was mentioned earlier, with 1.5% increase on average, even though the rate cap was 3.5. Again, that's to help with the cost of living expenses. and council's going to have to cover those costs. Now, a lot of the assets were actually mentioned, along with the $11.9 million of capital grants works, so I won't go over there. But what I will mention is, and you can look back in the annual reports from the previous year, LRCI 1, 2 and 3, so they're the funding that we received from the government. Now, LRCI 1 was $2.23 million, and 11 out of the 18 projects were spent outside of Portland. LRCI 2, 2.03 million, 5 of the 7 projects spent throughout the Shire, outside of Portland. And LRCI 3, 4.5 million, well, 3 out of the 8 projects were spent out of Portland. And with this budget, with some of those capital works, we're doing that again as well. So we're spreading the wealth throughout the Shire. And I'd like to finish on that. Those are the important factors that I'd like to look at. And I'll leave that up to Councillor Smith, if you'd like to write a reply on any of the commentary you've heard this evening.
No.
Will do. So I'll put the vote to councillors. All those in favour? So moved to 6-0.
Against? Scott? Scott? You have to vote against. Was there any against?
Nothing was 6-0. Any against? It shouldn't be. 6-0, there were 6 hands.
I didn't see hand go, I'm sorry. Yep.
Item 14.8. Councillor Carr has a conflict of interest, and along with myself, so I'll ask Councillor Smith to take the chair. Did I time it, Councillor Smith? Do you have time? No, it's all right.
Thank you. Councillors, there's a recommendation on page 33 of tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation as tabled on page 33 in its entirety, please.
Happy to second, Acting Chair.
Thank you, councillors. Anybody against? Would you like to make comment, Councillor Stevens?
It's quite straightforward, Mr. Acting Chair. It's no reason for comment.
Councillor Rank?
No comment.
All those in favour? So moved. 4-0.
Councillor Smith. Councillors, we now move to item 14.9, the Planning Delegation of Policy Update. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council adopt the updated planning delegation policy as contained in attachment 1.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. We have a seconder. Councillor Hawker. Any opposed? None. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is just an update of our existing planning delegation policy, but it actually does make some changes whereby we will meet the objectives. I mean, it's quite, the principles are there, and there's determinables there on what will come to council under the Planning Act. But once again, it's just council responding to those delegations where we may have a number of objectives where we can hear those objections, take that information away before we make a considered judgment on the advice of our planning staff. So it's an update, but it does make some quite significant changes to this planning policy.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Hawker.
Nothing to concur. I concur with Councillor Stevens. Thank you.
Any further comments from councillors? No. All those in favour? 6-0. Passed. (14.10). It's January 26 community consultation. There's a recommendation there, councillors. Councillor Rank.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council commence the community engagement process in accordance with Council's community engagement policy 3rd of July to the 23rd of July 2023 inclusive on the future direction of Council-led events, awards and ceremonies on January the 26th, 2024 and into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Rank.
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Rank.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. This is an opportunity to receive feedback. As we get closer to January 26, councillors are often asked, what are we doing? And this now is an opportunity to seek feedback from you so that we can make an informed decision. This is to do with council-led events. It's not community events, it's council-led events. It also involves the awards that we have. That have commonly been referred to as is that right? Yes, Australia Day Awards. I also want to make the point that this is not to be confused with the Voice to Parliament. This is a completely separate conversation, and this is one that is long overdue. And that's why it will be good to get feedback so that we can make a timely decision about what it is that the community would like us to do on January 26. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rank. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Rank covered it off pretty well, and there's also an enabler there. In December of 2022, the federal government announced an update to the Citizenship Ceremonies Code, allowing councils to hold those between the dates of January 23 to January 29. Prior to that update, it was mandated that we held them on January 26. So we do have some space to work in now, and the conversation is long overdue, and I'm looking forward to the feedback from the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, any further comments? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Pretty much everything I was going to say has been said already, but to reiterate, as per the recommendation, Council intends to seek feedback on how residents feel about its Australia Day events in Portland and Casterton only on January 26 each year. Recently, the legislation, as Councillor Carr said, has changed in the governing Australia Day and its ceremonies. This now gives councils the opportunity to ask for the feedback on its Australia Day ceremonies. The feedback is only sought for Portland and Casterton, as we said. We know there are a lot of smaller events that run, and these don't count here. January 26 is significant for every Australian, regardless of their views, and as such may mean something different to everyone, and we would like to know what that meaning is. We would appreciate all the feedback we can get, as widely spread between age, gender, demographic. Along with your submission, please advise a reason as to why you do or do not support any of the points in the public consultation. For us, a simple yes or no simply won't offer enough substance when dealing with an issue as important as this one. As stated before by Councillor Rank, this recommendation has nothing to do with the Voice of Parliament, in which we have seen nationally as of late. It's a separate task in which we are asking you to undertake and ask you treat it separately. There are essentially two outcomes here: to keep the status quo or to make a change. Both options are still on the table, but we are seeking this feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillors, any further commentary?
No, sir.
No. I know it's not usual place for me to have a talk about this, councillors, but I would like to just add a couple of quick comments. So I want to be clear, we do not have the power, council does not have the power to change the date itself. Australia Day, for now, will remain January 26th. That is a federal government issue. We do have the power at looking how we spend the day and what that day says about our community. That's what we're asking people to have a good, hard think about. What does Australia Day mean to you? What values does it hold? And does that date give everybody the same opportunity? That's all we're asking for, that feedback. Thank you, councillors. We have a motion there. All those in favour? So passed 6-0. Councillors, item 14 28.11 contract for the provision of electrical line clearance services. Councillor Hawker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation on page 41 in its entirety.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Do we have a seconder for that recommendation?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Rank. Councillor Hawker. Commentary.
Nothing further to say. This is a standard procedure. Woodrow Tree Technicians Proprietary Limited have been awarded this contract. So that's terrific. And congratulations. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawker. Councillor Rank.
Nothing further to add.
Councillors, any further commentary you would like to add to this contract? It's pretty straightforward. Right. All those in favour, councillors? So moved. 6-0. And that concludes item 15, confidential reports. Neil, urgent business. Neil, closure of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor.